Imagine not being able to read the paper because your hands were shaking. Imagine not being able to read newsprint as your world faded to black. The National Federation of the Blind, Newsline, Indiana. With your host, Lee Martin, and co-host, Florence Myers McSwine.
Welcome to this week's National Federation of the Blind Newsline, Indiana. Today we have a special taping of our show with a very special guest. Now I'm your co-host, Florence Myers McSwine, here with your host, Mr. Lee Martin, along with our very special guest, President Mark Riccobono. So President Riccobono, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yes, Mr. President, we here in Indiana are very grateful that you accepted our offer to come onto the NFB Newsline Indiana show. And we have so much to discuss, and we know we have the right person on the show to discuss these questions with and just find out a little bit more about what makes Mark Riccobono tick as well.
Well, I can tell you about that. That is for sure.
And, first of all, we want to start talking a little bit about a service of the National Federation of the Blind, which is the National Federation of the Blind Newsline. Now, we know that you are an avid user of the service and a supporter of the service. So kind of tell us a little bit about how NFB Newsline impacts your life and how you feel it should impact other people's lives, subscribers' lives, and people that haven't subscribed.
Oh, well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to be here. And certainly thank you for the opportunity to talk about NFB Newsline. I think I first became a subscriber of NFB Newsline in 1996 when I was a college student. At that time, I don't remember how many newspapers there were, not nearly what there is today. There was a handful. You could almost name all of them. And it was only touch-tone telephone. I have been using NFB Newsline in all of its forms now, telephone, mobile app, delivery via email, to keep up on the latest news, to get cutting edge information in times like COVID-19, to keep up with sports teams, to get recipes from one or another of the magazines that are there. All the ways you can think of using Newsline, I've been able to use it. And today, I primarily use the mobile app, and I often, when I find something that's of interest, I email it to myself. Can do that right in the app. And I'm really excited now that the Newsline application also includes the core technology of KNFB Reader, so you can use your smartphone with the mobile app to take a picture of a piece of print and read it. Newsline is a great service. It's free, so blind people should take advantage of it. It gives us access to more information, I think, than most sighted people have access to. And the most important thing is it belongs to us. We get to define what else we want it to do, what features we want to add to it in the future. It's our service, and we get to continue to shape it. And then the best way to do that is give feedback on what we should do with it in the future.
We're talking about the future, and I guess coming from 1996 with the service, it has really expanded itself. And I'm just proud to be a member of the organization, as well as working with this NFB Newsline service here in Indiana. Florence, I know you have a question for him that you were wanting to talk about.
What I would like to do is talk more about you and your journey becoming the president of the National Federation of the Blind. So we have quite a bit to talk about today.
That's a long journey, that's for sure.
How long have you been a member of the National Federation of the Blind?
Oh, well, I started using Newsline very shortly after I became a member. I actually joined in 1996, and I think Newsline first became available in the state of Wisconsin, where I was living. Actually, it might have been early 97 that I first became a subscriber. I had only been a Federation member for a number of months. At that point, I was still learning about the nature of what we do in the National Federation of the Blind. I was starting to study our philosophy about blindness and it in my own life, and it was very different than what I was used to. It was a different way of thinking about blindness than what I was used to, and the idea that I could have access to information like was available in NFB Newsline was really refreshing for me. I was used to um, situations where I didn't have to read because I didn't have the tools to read. I was never taught Braille when I was in school. And so the Federation really helped open my mind and heart to something different, a way to live. And it continues to be something I evolve and practice in my life.
Now, President Riccobono, as you evolved into the National Federation of the Blind, as we go down this path, you participated in something that I really was kind of jealous of you doing this. I said, I wished I could have done that. And that is the Blind Drivers Challenge. You want to share a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, how far to go back? I came to Baltimore 2003. I was invited to join the staff of the National Federation of the Blind. I had been running educational programs in the state of Wisconsin, and our president at the time, Mark Maurer, offered me a job, and I showed up and said, "Here I am. What am I supposed to do?" And he sent me on various projects. A lot of them were crazy projects that had definition to them. I was just supposed to pursue them. And so what I would do is go talk to members of the Federation and try to work them out. And at that time, we had just opened our Jernigan Institute, our research and training center here in Baltimore. And we were talking about building a car that a blind person could drive, which I thought was a crazy idea that was never going to happen. I'm just letting you know, I thought it was never going to happen. Well, it turned out that I took a call from Virginia Tech, and they said, "Hey, we'd like to work on this blind driver challenge you have. Will you come talk to us about it?" Okay, sure. So I went on, and they said, "We build cars that drive themselves. So we can just put you in the back seat and push a button and we'll be done." And I got up and I paced around the room and I said, "No, no, no, no. That's not what we want. We want to build a car that a blind person can drive. A blind person has to be able to use the steering wheel, push the pedal, be able to crash the car." They said, "You want to crash the car?" "No, no, no. Don't want to crash the car, but it has to be real enough. There's a possibility of crashing it. It can't just be the computers doing the work. Blind people have to use their mind, their skills, their reflexes to drive." They said, "Oh, that's a little bit harder." That put us on a path of working with Virginia Tech. I won't tell that whole story, but in the process, we needed people to potentially test drive the car. And so I had been working on the project, said, "Well, sure, I'd like to test drive the car." Um, and it sounds more fun than it really was. It was a lot of sitting around waiting for the engineers to fix that thing, and you would go and they'd have to fix something else. And um, after a while, we got to the point where the technology was working, and we kicked sighted engineers out of the car. We said, if we're going to actually demonstrate that this is possible, you can't be sitting in the back seat because even if you're doing nothing, it looks like you're doing something. And so I was a good friend of Neil Lewis. The two of us were the primary test dummies at that point. And I was the first one to get to drive without anybody else in the car. And it turned out to be more powerful than I expected. The idea that we could build a technology that would allow a blind person to navigate a car independently with nobody in the car. I wasn't doing anything different. I had been testing. It just felt so when there was nobody in the car. So I rolled down the windows, turned on the radio, do when you drive, right? It's January, so it was a little cold, but took off. We rented a racetrack in order to test this car. And one of the most powerful experiences of my life, being in the middle, again, building a tech not driven by blind people, our hopes and dreams. And we were really the only ones that believed it was possible. And I'm glad you brought that up because we're coming up to the 10th anniversary in January 2021. And it's because of what we did 10 years ago that we have been able to put blind people in the center of the automated vehicle development that's happened over the last decade. And it's because of that work that we did more than years ago that is going to make sure that blind people have access to automated vehicles in the future when they start driving on our roadways in a major way.
And I tell you, I appreciate that, and I just can't wait. Just can't wait. So we also want to know, what are some of your favorite pastimes?
Oh, favorite pastimes. It's hard to think about during COVID. The pastimes are all kind of mixed up with everything else, you know?
Amen.
Well, the first and foremost, I like spending time with my family, hanging out with the family, playing games, teaching my kids to ride bikes, whatever comes up. I like to, that's a number one in terms of use of my free time. Number two, I pretend to play guitar now and then. Don't ask me to play any, but I do enjoy playing guitar. And I've owned a guitar for 25 years or so, but really, I would say over the last 2.5 years, I've played more probably than I have in the last 20. I usually like to listen to baseball. I'm a baseball fan, so I enjoy sports a little bit. I'm not a sports fanatic, but I do enjoy watching baseball. And during COVID, I've been hitting my 10,000 steps a day, so that's kind of a thing for me. So I've been upping my walking. Maybe I'll get into running again. I don't know, but I also enjoy cooking and trying new things. So in and amongst everything, a little bit of reading in there, things like that.
And Florence, you there?
President, yes, I am. I'm here. I'm just taking in the pastimes of President Rick Bono. Well, I wanted to find out with this the COVID thing going on. It sounds like we all have changed our lifestyle somewhat, and a lot of us are spending a lot more time with families. And you, Rick Bono, well, I consider you, as we all do, you being the president of the largest organized group of blind individuals in the nation, have become what we call our mouthpiece for the blind. And being that mouthpiece, you assist in making changes every day, the lives of blind people. Did you ever think that you would be the president of the National Federation of the Blind?
Well, Florence, to answer your question, no, I really didn't see myself as being on the path to the presidency of the Federation. Like a lot of people, I was part of the speculation about who was going to be our next president and things like that. But that really wasn't, that was so far from where I saw where I could be. And what has happened over and over and over again in this organization is that it has helped to raise my expectations driven by blind people. So over time, I made the decision that what I wanted to do with my career was dedicated to the National Federation of the Blind and our authentic organized blind movement. And so there came a point, maybe 10 years ago or so, when I knew that that's where I wanted to be, whatever that looked like, and I started dedicating my energy and talent to it in a way that was different. And eventually, when our immediate past president, Mark Maurer, said that he was not going to run for reelection and asked if I was interested, I had really no idea, no full concept of what that meant, but I knew that I wanted to try. And I knew that most importantly, if he believed and if others believed that I had the capacity to do it, I was willing to try. That's what this organization has always done for me. And I think it's done for many, many people that I know around the nation. It's believed in me more than I've believed in me. And that's still what happens in the Federation today. I'm motivated, energized by the belief that blind people have in me. And I feel committed to taking that belief and turning it into action for other blind people. And so it's a beautiful relationship. And I hope that I can turn the presidency over someday to someone that has that same sort of spirit, imagination, and heart for what we do in this movement.
Well, President, I know that it's a lot of issues that we have, and now we're up here where the voting elections is just around the corner. And a matter of fact, it started here in Marion County today. So I know that we've had issues to accessibility with voting for blind and vision impaired citizens. And could you expound on that just a little bit, our efforts, what we're doing in the blind community?
Well, we've been pushing access to voting for a long time. And we warned states that they should be ready for the 2020 election to make sure that all of their voting systems were accessible to blind people, not just showing up at physical polling places. And well, virtually none of them listened. And when COVID hit, there started to be a lot of talk about going to mail-in ballots, different systems, and they should have been ready. All states should have been ready and should acknowledge that these systems have to be accessible to blind people. And so we've been pounding on states to get it right for 2020. It's a big election. We told them more than a year ago to be ready, and they just haven't been. And they just haven't been. We've been protecting the rights of blind people for a long time. And we have seen this election and the importance of it as an opportunity to raise expenses for voting. So we've been pressing the issue. We've sued a number of states. We've gotten settlements with a number of states. There are a number of states where we haven't been able to get a real commitment to accessibility, and we're going to be pursuing it after the election. We're going to ask for damages for blind people who were simply shut out of the 2020 election. We're making it better at all levels, from voter registration to what happens at the physical polls to accessible mail-in ballots and beyond. And in one state, we even have electronic submission of ballots being permitted for blind people. So we need to do more. The important thing is, if you're a blind person, we need you to vote. Even if we need you to get out and vote. And then we need you to fill out our blind votes survey so that we can log what's working, what's not, and we can use that for our advocacy work going forward after the November election. So this organization ended voting more than anyone else, and we're going to continue to do that after November.
Okay, well, we certainly appreciate that answer. And we just want to say once again, thank you for your time. And we look forward to celebrating our state convention with you this weekend. And just once again, thank you so very much, Mr. President. So today we've heard from—
Thank you, it's been a pleasure.
It's been a great pleasure. And I know we have so many other questions, but we just don't have enough time. So we will work on time again, and perhaps someday you can come back on our show and we can talk a little bit more. How about that?
Sounds great.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, sir.
I'm Danny Wayne Beamer, Program Manager of the Elder Blind Program at the Will Center in Terre Haute, Indiana. I introduce the NFB Newsline to seniors in 13 southwestern counties in Indiana. I also utilize the NFB Newsline for my radio station public affairs shows. The NFB Newsline, experience it today.
Learn more by calling 855-963-6476 or visit nfbnewsline-in.org.
We are the nation's blind, and we read NFB Newsline.
If you or someone you know is visually impaired or print challenged, the National Federation of the Blind has a resource you need.
I use NFB Newsline when reading Hammond Northwest Times.
Using NFB Newsline, I read the Christian Science magazine.
Dad, you read Jerusalem Post, too.
Learn more by calling 855-963-6476 or visit nfbnewsline-in.org.
Live the life you want. Read NFB Newsline.
It's free.
The first question that we'll have today from our students with the National Federation of the Blind Indiana affiliate will be the question from Ms. Haley.
Who are your role models and how have they shaped you as a leader and voice for positive change?
That is a complicated question. Well, there are a number of them. First of all, I've had a number of educators in my life that have been very influential to me, both the time they spent with me, but also their approach to believing in me and educating me have been really impactful to me. Two federationists that I would call out. First of all, Mark Maurer, our immediate past president, who I have been blessed to years and spend a lot of time to know him personally and the way he operates, and especially as I was coming into having a family, he was very influential in helping me understand that balance was important. And also Betsy Zaborowski, who is now deceased, but she was the first executive director of the National Federation of the Blind Jernigan Institute, someone that I really learned from in charging headlong questions and taking on new things, but also continuing to be authentic to who I am, what my style is, and at the same time holding to my beliefs.
Now, our second question is from Ms. Sarah Meyer.
What do you see as being the top 3 or 4 priorities or challenges facing blind Americans in the next generation or the next 30 years?
Well, I don't claim to be a future teller, but I mean, I will say that we're still very much at the beginning of tackling the access to technology problem. And that's an issue that the coming generation is going to have to grapple with in a big way. We've laid some great groundwork for that, but there's still a whole lot of technology coming out that's not accessible. And accessibility, built-in accessibility, has got to be a huge priority. Secondly, I would say education is our most pressing civil rights issue. It's a persistent issue that we haven't, it's at the K-12 level, but also when you think about higher education and continuing education, this is a problem that is going to persist for a while, and we have to figure out innovative ways to deal with it because, frankly, the educators haven't. They've, in a lot of cases, given up on blind people, and we need to be the ones to make this happen. I guess Thirdly, I would say that employment is a persistent problem, and not just employment, but ability to make meaningful choices about employment based on the ability to uh, um, the ability to leave a job and go to another one because the technology is going to be accessible, the ability not to be stuck, a job that is really underemployment for you because as a blind person, someone's not willing to take a chance on you. We still need to do a lot of work to move the employment needle for all blind people. And also to do that in a way that makes sure that blind people with diverse characteristics have those same employment opportunities. We know that the employment statistics are horrible otherwise, but the ability for diverse populations to get equal access to even the rehabilitation system to get a shot at that employment is a huge problem. So the employment pipeline and addressing the diversity disparities in the institutionalized systems in the blindness field are huge challenges that we're going to have to tackle.
What advice or guidance do you have for recruitment of teens and emerging adults to our movement, especially in a society where we are inundated with meetings and responsibilities? How can we help young people to become passionate and motivated to get involved with our education and advocacy efforts?
Well, since I'm not of that demographic, I hesitate to answer the question. I think we need to draw those individuals in to our organization, invite them in, and ask them what they're looking for. That doesn't mean we should do all of it, but I think we have to understand and start from a place of understanding where those youth want to be, what they're looking for, as a way of helping them understand that they can shape this organization too when they come into it. I also think that designing interesting, engaging educational programs to draw those youth in and not making them just all about fun. They can be fun. They should be fun. They have to be fun. But they also have to be consistent with our philosophy and with our self empowering strategies and to present the real problems that blind people face. You know, it's easy for a lot of young blind people today to think that it's so much easier because of the technology and the things that they don't have to fight for. We have to be presenting them with the reality that while that's true in a lot of ways, there's still a huge amount of discrimination. And they don't want to wait until they face that discrimination to be able to know where the network is, to tackle it, and to be contributing to making it better. So I say invite them in, find out what they're about, what are their values, what are their priorities, and let that shape what we do. Now, you know, that's going to challenge us because they're going to want to do things differently than we have. And the goal is to find that middle ground where we can bring what works, what draws older people in, but what also engages that younger generation. You know, we want to be a diverse organization. We have to find ways to appeal to the diversity of people that we want to be part of our organization. So I'm not the young guy to ask because I'm not that young anymore. So let's invite some young folks in and find out what would be appealing to them.
Well, thank you so much. And Kelly, thank you so much. So now we'll bring in Misty.
Thanks. President Riccobono, what unique strengths, abilities, and perspectives do you think blind youth in this country can use to facilitate the improvement of the lives of our wider blind community, both within the United States and around the world? Thanks.
Well, Misty, I appreciate your question. I guess the first thing I would say is that, you know, blind youth bring a perspective that we need in the organized blind movement. And it's one that is digitally native. It's one that has grown up with, embedded with social media. And that's a perspective that we need to incorporate into our work. How do we bring that authentic understanding of those digital tools to our work? We still are very much scratching the surface at the possibilities there. The second thing is, I think the emerging generation has a real ingrained understanding of the intersectionality of characteristics and how that plays with blindness. And that's going to have a huge influence on what we tackle in terms of diversity and inclusion within this movement. And bringing that perspective is going to make a huge difference. The other thing I would say is always true with younger generations. They have new ideas. They think that their ideas are the best ideas. And that's what I thought. And what happens in this iterative process is you figure out, well, they're pretty good ideas, but in order to make them really great ideas, you also have to learn about why we've done what we've done and why we're doing what we're doing in order to make those ideas really powerful. And I am of the opinion that doing work in the United States of America with the organized blind movement we have in this organization has impact all around the world, because we are the gold standard for an organization led, directed, built by blind people. And other countries, other organizations around the world are looking to us because we have the most authentic blind-driven organization in the world.
As I travel the nation, I read NFB Newsline.
I live in Valparaiso, Indiana, and I listen to my local news on NFB Newsline.
As a student, I enjoy reading current events on NFB Newsline.
Learn more by calling 855-963-6476 or visit nfbnewsline-in.org.
Subscribe free to NFB Newsline today.
President Riccobono, thank you for taking these questions and taking the time. Earlier, you spoke about diversity. So my question to you is, when it comes to diversity and inclusion, what does that look like through the lens of the National Federation as we look at focusing on our future?
Well, it's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it. And I'm sure I don't have a perfect answer to it because I'm still in the process of learning along with everybody else. What it looks like for the National Federation of the Blind is this. First and foremost, we're a blindness-driven organization, and our issues are around blindness. That's what we work on. But we want to embrace, lift up, and celebrate in a better, stronger way than we ever have before the fact that blind people have all variety of intersecting characteristics. And the way we do that is to first start by making sure that within our organization, because that's what we can influence, that we're really living up to the of diversity that we have in our organizational code of conduct, can be found on our website, and that we're building pipelines to bring more diverse blind people into our organization. It's not enough to say that we welcome it. We have to be actively working to build the pipeline of people and then make sure that they stay. I think that's going to challenge us in the future to have very honest conversations about what is or is not happening, or about why we're doing things that we're doing, or why we shouldn't be doing things that we've been doing. I see our organization having a stronger cultural competency amongst our leaders, and in fact, making that a core part of our leadership training going forward, is the recognition that, if you're a blind person who's also Black and you're teaching travel, you're going to have a different experience than a blind person who's not Black. And it's our role as an organization to help with those disparities. I mentioned earlier the rehabilitation system, which doesn't treat all blind people the same, that certain resources are available more in certain communities than others. We have to do better than that, and we can drive it through this organization. I hope that increasingly we feel good about the work that we're doing, diversity and inclusion. There's probably never going to be a day when we're going to get it perfect, right? But my hope is that the future looks like we can have that interactive conversation without hostility, and hostility meaning that we don't feel terrible when we get it wrong, that we can honestly say, okay, we missed the mark on that. We do it better next time. We have a lot of work to do, though, and it starts with our organization, and that's going to be the mechanism we're going to use to impact others outside our organization. I'm proud that we have a degree of diversity and inclusion already within our movement. It just could be better, and it could be a lot better. And I'm excited about the work that we're doing through our Diversity and Inclusion Committee, which is the group that I continue to look to within our movement for guidance and advice about what we need to be doing.
Well, thank you so very much for that comment there, Mr. LaRon Carter. And we'll move on to our next question. So that is with Mr. Christopher Myers.
Bono, I've got one question for you about the how we carry ourselves on a day-to-day basis as blind people with this new perspective that we're learning about. So my question for you is, the Federation is venturing into diversity and inclusion efforts in new ways. The discussions surrounding intersectional identities and characteristics has become part of our language and collective work. Does this have any effects on our day-to-day interactions with the sighted world? If so, how do we act, speak, carry ourselves differently given this raised intersectional awareness?
Yeah, I'm not sure I know the answer to that. I mean, I think one outward piece is that we want to make sure that blind people are owning all the various characteristics they have, and they feel comfortable doing that. Obviously, we have emphasized blindness, but since we welcome those other characteristics, I think there is a possibility that we will help blind people be more confident about those other characteristics, because we create an environment where it's not just okay to be blind, it's okay to have all those other characteristics as well. And so I think that's going to have an influence on what blind people do publicly. I guess the second thing I would say is, part of what I feel like we're doing is helping blind people have a stronger awareness of some of those implicit bias that exists. And we're doing it for the context of our organization. But I hope people would take that learning and utilize it in other aspects of their life. And I think that that's going to have value in society. What we hope, by the way, as part of that, is that by our members going out, that we bring diversity, that we bring blindness to the diversity and inclusion conversation more broadly. Because when you hear about diversity and inclusion, it usually doesn't include blind people. And what we can do externally is start to bring blind people into the center of that discussion. Say, these things are important, but we also need blindness to be part of this dialogue.
Any recent progress on some of the mentoring programs which the Federation is engaged in? I know that there are a number of different mentoring programs through the student division, and I think that there are some other business partnerships, but is there any progress for mentoring for young people?
I mean, mentoring is always something we do. We've been doing it in, informal and formal ways for 8 decades now. It's always something we're working on. I think that what we do is we build this network, and we want to keep strengthening it and finding different dimensions of it. So yes, we're making progress. We've started some work with Pearson, having a mentoring program where it's not just connected with blind people, it's connected with sighted professionals. We're going to explore that with more companies and organizations as we go forward to really take the great mentoring work that we've been able to do for the decades informally and create new ways to formalize it. So I'd say mentoring is always something we're working on. It's always taking new shapes. And now with the virtual environment that we're in, we're still learning about the best way to make the virtual mentoring effective, powerful as we can. And we need people's ideas about what works and what doesn't in that regard.
Well, thank you so very much for that, Christopher. And thank you so very much for taking the time out today also, President Mark Riccobono. Florence, you want to close this out?
Well, I would like to first thank you, President Mark Riccobono, for spending this afternoon with us, for sharing and enlightening us, as well as the other listening audience. We find it was a pleasure talking with you, and it's an honor speaking with you about these topics today. In closing it out, though, Lee, I always seem to go back to, again, one of my favorite quotes from Edward Hale. And that is, I am just one, but I am one. I cannot do everything, but I can do something. I will not let what I cannot do deter me from what I can.
Okay, and I thank you for that, Florence. And with our very special guest today, President Mark Riccobono, do you have any words that you would like to part with us today?
Yeah, I guess what I'd like to say is that the National Federation of the Blind knows that blindness is not the characteristic that defines you or your future. And I would invite you to join us on our journey, where every day we raise the expectations for blind people, because we recognize that low expectations create obstacles between blind people and our dreams. If you're not yet a member of ours, we need you to be part of our movement. We need your help. There's a lot of work to be done to make blind people truly first-class citizens in this society, and to innovate in the way that we know blind people can and have for decades. We need your help to go to the rest of the way to freedom for the blind, and to innovate technologies like NFB Newsline that are authentically driven by blind people. We want to be a better organization because we're a people's movement, and the more people we have in it, the better. So I'd invite you to join us. Go to nf.org and go to join us if you are not yet a member. And we hope you'll get involved in Indiana, as well as other places you might end up in this nation.
Well, thank you so very much. All of our students that ask questions, thank you very much for your time today, President Mark Riccobono, and may God bless you and your family as we continue forth, focusing on our future. Join us at the National Federation of the Blind Indiana State Convention, which will be held this week, the 8th, 9th, and 10th. And you'll hear more from our president, Mark Riccobono. You'll learn more about diversity and inclusion, parental rights, employment during COVID, and a plethora of other things. So take good care, and may God bless each of you until we come back again next week.
The National Federation of the Blind, Newsline, Indiana. For more information, go to nfb-in.org or call 855-963-6476. That's 855-963-6476. The National Federation of the Blind encourages you to live the life you want.